I'm here with Erik Kraber, audio director of Apex Legends. When I auditioned for Pathfinder and I got the callback, Erik was there for the callback, surrounded by, I guess, a couple of devs, some writers, and everybody was super nice. I thought, this callback is going really well. They seem to like everything I'm doing. Like, so, okay. And then I got to join the Apex family. And you know, the rest is gaming potato history because I'm awful at it. But anyway,
you and me both.
Yeah. First of all, you and I don't live too far away from each other. I don't reveal our neighborhood because we both like our privacy. But how are you doing? How's your family doing? How's everybody holding up?
For the most part, pretty well. You know, we're like everybody. We're, you know, it's a scary, sad time, and you know, everybody's searching themselves, trying to figure out what everything's about nowadays, and what direction everything should be going. And yeah, but I mean, we're safe. We live in a house that has enough rooms that we can get distance from each other if necessary.
Very important.
So yeah, that definitely helps. So we're fortunate. We're not on the front lines like, you know, people that are working in hospitals or delivering food or working in other stores. So, you know, we're fortunate that we have those people supporting us, and we've been able to stay relatively safe. And I just get to stay here locked in my basement, continuing to work on Apex.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It looks to me like you got, I mean, that almost to me looks like a recording studio. I look at the fabric behind you. It almost looks like you've got noise canceling boards set up. That's just sort of the wall though, right?
Yeah, well, it actually is a sound studio. We bought our place. We bought it, I think, almost 15 years ago now. I was considering doing a work from home, essentially going independent. And we just happened upon this house that the previous owner, she was a composer. So she converted the basement into an actual recording studio. We have 2 recording booths down here in the large area that I'm in. And I was like, this is perfect. Let's get this place.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So it's worked out pretty well. And I was laughing about that. I've had the studio down here for so long, and not until the pandemic have I really taken full advantage of it. You know, I mean, I come down here to do my own personal stuff, you know, music composition and that kind of thing. But, you know, I'm usually in here a few hours a week, and now I get to be here in here all week and all weekend pretty much.
Now I know who I'm calling if my stuff goes down. It's like, Erik, I'll wear a mask. Just run the board, please. Yeah, let me just, you know, it's for your game, for God's sakes.
There you go. I know. Seriously, we're at that point where I was like, maybe I should just have Chris walk over here and just record him in here. But your setup's nice. I mean, you've got a pretty good home setup as far as, you know, I'm a stuff we got from you's been great.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of our fellow legends are on-camera actors, and they have been catching up and are getting caught up to the, you know, ins and outs of home recording. But it's all I do is voice acting, and so I needed to have something that was ready to go. And for me, the only change was I just needed to buy Source Connect. That was the app that I needed. Once I had that, I didn't change anything else, really. Yeah. Nothing else has been.
Yeah, and it works out pretty well for the most part. And like you said, it's arranged, but most of, you know, our talent on Apex guys are very experienced voice actors, and you have had to do, you know, you guys have been working from home on a bunch of stuff, especially those of you who've had, you know, ads that you have to do, radio gigs, things where they expect the 1 hour turnaround on things. So there's no way you're getting in a car and driving through LA traffic to get to a studio to record something.
You get a lot of last minute copy coming in. All right, same day turnaround. And I see that. And I love being able to audition and be in the mix. But at the same time, if you were planning to do something, a lot of that comes and you realize I can't plan to do anything because I got to be near my booth. And well, during a pandemic, you're never far from it. So. Now, have you been able to get out much? I mean, I've been getting out more, but I'm still masking up. But yesterday, for the first time, my family and I went for a walk. We went for a walk in just an area of homes only, and I let everyone take their masks off when we didn't see anyone around. And as soon as someone came, we'd put them on, because I've been doing the research. You're safe if you do that, but if you're just hanging out and people are constantly passing by, no, you need to mask up. But it's freed me up a little bit more. I don't know how you guys have been experiencing it.
Yeah, I mean, same thing. If we go out, take the dog for a walk, do that kind of thing, we're always wearing our masks and being careful, especially when we're close proximity to other people. But yeah, I mean, our family, we're a bunch of homebodies for the most part, so we're kind of okay with being at home. Although I did have the experience of, like, I hadn't driven my car, and I don't know how long, it was like 6 weeks or something since I had driven my car. And
you got to take that thing out.
I was better make sure it still runs,
get
the battery going. So I just drove just to get the car, to run. And as I was driving, feeling totally fine, like tears start rolling down my face. And I'm like, whoa, that is really weird. It's like this strange thing of, you feel kind of imprisoned, in your own place for a really long time. And then that sense of freedom, like, oh my God, this is what normal feels like, kind of hits you really, really randomly, like I wasn't expecting that kind of reaction to just driving my car around.
I know. I tell my wife this. I said, I know, baby, we're a tight family. It's easy for us to stay in, but we don't have a yard. We have a balcony, and the kids are kids. And even though they can run up and down the stairs, because it's like a 2-story condo, they need to be out. And even if they're going to complain about it, just let's let them be out. Let Violet pick a few flowers. Let Remy just roam a little bit near me, and we just need to be in the sun. And, humans need it. So just do it the right way, and I think we kind of don't even realize how important it is to be out in nature. And I mean, I think saying as the guy that works on video games, right? Worlds, but it is strange how it's like, it's really easy to just get very stuck in your own digital universe and not get out and have the sun hit your skin and be around trees and nature and go, oh wow, this is so healing. Right. Well, how much has I know before, obviously Respawn had an office and sort of a little campus there that was fully staffed and people were constantly working, and almost all of it is everyone working from home now. And has that been a relatively easy transition to make, because it's all hard drives and files that you can send?
Yeah, I mean, we're really lucky. We have a type of job and a type of business that, for the most part, we can keep going, working remotely. Of course, when this all started going down, our IT department was, working around the clock trying to get ahead of it, because they kind of saw the need to work from home coming. And we certainly weren't a studio that was had a lot of working from home. We're a pretty tight-knit group. We like interacting with each other. There's a lot of hallway conversations where decisions get made. So we weren't already set up for everybody to be working from home at that point. And the IT team and facilities really just busted their asses to get us all set up and turned around within a matter of a couple of weeks, where we went from having almost no capacity to handle to being almost fully functional. So we've had some bumps on the road, but by and large, we're able to just keep going and keep supporting the game, and keep hitting the deadlines.
Yeah, because if you think about it, the lockdown was basically late March, mid-late March, and you guys had season 5 coming, and you hit it. Everybody, I mean, it's made a big splash, and I think overwhelmingly positive feedback on it. There's a little question of a nerf of a certain character that is still being dealt with on the home front here. But I mean, the fact that you guys were able to do this on a dime, to be able to just, okay, take your work home, and you're still going to hit the deadlines, and have such a cool character get rolled out, have these new maps. I mean, I wonder if people realize just how big of a deal it is to change all the elements of a game you're changing this often.
Yeah, I think sometimes, which, understandably, people who don't do what we do, it's easy to kind of look at things and kind of take them for granted. But yeah, there is a lot of work, a lot of effort, a lot of coordination, a lot of, I mean, the things that end up coming out, we've been already working on for, a half a year or potentially more, by the time they get released. But yeah, it went relatively smoothly, and the latest season has been doing really well. We're really happy about that. And again, people had to work really hard to make sure that all happened. It made it seem like it was smooth and seamless, but yeah, there was a lot of things to sort out in the process, and keep the communication going. That's been, I think, the biggest change for all of us, is just how we communicate with each other. Now you need to do everything through Slack and Hangouts and Zoom, and trying to make sure we keep in communication. I think it helps that, like I said, the team's already pretty well bonded. A lot of us on the team, we've already been working together for many, many years, on Titanfall 1 and 2 and through Apex. So I think that makes working from home a little bit easier, because there's no needing to get to know people and how they function and what they do. It's sort of, we already know what each other's capable of and how we function, and have gotten the process down pretty well.
Right. Now, you are, because I talked to Tom about this last week, Tom Cassiello, one of the writers, that they are usually 2 or 3 seasons ahead as far as anything in any given time, what's in development, but it could be as many as 5 seasons ahead when they're thinking about arcs, just general ideas that are being developed. Now, as far as what your job is, now, actually, could you tell everyone on the chat and everyone playing the home game what exactly your task is at Respawn?
Yeah, so I'm the senior audio director on Apex, and I have an amazing team of sound designers and a dialogue supervisor and editor, and a composer, and all of you voice actors that we work with. And my job is basically to supervise all of that. So that means directing talent, working with you guys when we go into the voice sessions, as well as sort of heading up the casting process for the different legends and characters in the game, working with our composer, Stephen Barton, to sort of figure out what the music pieces should be that support a legend or support a season, and how to hit sort of seasonal themes, how to establish the theme, when to reuse the Apex theme within pieces, and how to evolve it. And then working with the sound designers on my team, supervising the design work that they do, whether it's weapons or the sounds for legends, or we also do the majority of the marketing pieces that come out, the trailers and things. So we'll do the sound design and mix on those as well.
So you're not just pushing the red record button before I talk, is what you're saying? Because that's all I see. Yeah, I know. That's the engineer.
Next to Dutch, and Dutch presses the button.
So you just don't drink a latte while you nod at the guy and say action. Okay, I just wanted to clear that up.
I do that sometimes, but I don't drink lattes. So I'm probably drinking water and
yeah.
pointing to other people.
Yeah. This is and this brings up a lot of questions too, because the amount of audio involved in a game, from the music to the vocal performances to the, I guess, in a film you'd call it Foley work, just the sound effects, the sound environment is so, it sounds like it's only sound, but it's almost this 3-dimensional thing. And it has to be approached from so many different angles. And just your description of what you do reminded me of that.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of pieces that you have to make sure all come together nicely. You know, you sort of try setting a bar that things all need to reach, and try to create a common vision so that the aesthetic of all things kind of play together nicely. Yeah, and we always love putting lots of detail into the audio work. You know, every one of the guys on our team just takes an enormous amount of pride in, you know, how much they really try making everything feel bespoke and interesting and, you know, pleasing ear candy, but also all gelling together nicely within this world that we've created.
And this brings up a question. Um, I've never heard it, and I imagine it's not something you guys ignored. I wonder if anyone ever brought it up at one of the early development meetings. But these matches are taking place in these beautifully crafted environments. The topography, the just the blades of grass you see sometimes. Did you ever think about putting any kind of? You've got plenty of flora. Did you ever think about putting any fauna in? Maybe a bird chirping, maybe a cricket here and there. Any kind of wildlife besides obviously the big monsters, that prowlers that come to try to kill you. Did you think about any of that, or is that just a little bit too much for you to have to program in?
No, we do that. I mean, in our ambience work, the sounds of, you know, the fields that you're roaming through or the
Uh-huh.
interiors of the buildings, you know, Tyler Parsons is kind of our master of ambience, and he's, you know, he's got a good sense of how things should all fit together and when we should be hinting at wildlife that you kind of may or may not ever see, and
Okay.
hinting at, you know, other things like we'd always talked about, um, from way back in the day. You know, I used to work back on PlayStation 1 games. So there's always this sense of, we call, you know, ambience. The goal of the ambience was sort of to paint beyond what you could see.
Okay.
So it was not just a literal interpretation of a tree swing, therefore it needs sound. It's sort of what builds the world beyond what my eye can just be looking at right now, and how do I create an extended fantasy beyond, you know, what's been painted for you visually with geometry and art. So we tend to think of things that way, like how do we create little stories within the ambience, or to create just a broader sense of what this universe is inside of that. And if it has little critters in it, you know, what do the critters sound like in this? Because
Right.
this place feels kind of Earth-like, but it's not really Earth. You know,
Right.
it's familiar but also strange at times. So we, you know, have fun with design on that kind of thing.
Now, it also appears that you have a bit of a music background. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, you talk about composing and things like that. My wife
Hmm.
also has one. She went to MI, Musicians Institute in LA
Oh, cool.
years ago. And she tells me one of the hardest things to learn is mixing and mastering. So it's one thing to record an instrument, to record other instruments together, but to mix and master them, she said, is a different degree of difficulty. And it seems to me that mixing and mastering your audio for a game like this would be really complicated with all the elements you've got in there. Is that something? Is that? I mean, obviously, that's got to be like the last stage before it joins the rest of the game. And is that something that takes longer than any other part?
Yeah, well, I'd say that's the part that continues to evolve and continues to be the thing that we want to keep improving, you know, as we go. Uh, you know, as your wife said, it, yeah, it is like mixing and mastering is a whole other art form. You know,
Yeah.
you could be the best composer, the best instrumentalist, the best singer in the world, and that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be a good mixer or good at mastering. You know,
Mm-hmm.
those require a different ear, obviously different tools and technology to kind of make that all happen. But, you know, those are, in speaking with music, you know, that's a little bit easier is not the word, because it's obviously very complex art in itself. But
Right.
when you have it, a two-channel master of a particular song, that's what you have to work with. You know that this is fixed. Every time I listen to it is exactly the same thing
Uh huh.
every single time. I know how to predict what's going to happen, make adjustments based on the prediction. Obviously, interactive audio like in video games, we have to be testing for every different permutation of combination of things at any given time. So we have to not only be thinking about, how do these blend well, but how do they blend well in a thousand different contexts. What if they're in this area versus that, interior versus exterior, different types of interiors versus exteriors? What if it's these combinations of characters and legends that are firing off their abilities, or weapons that are being fired, or things like that? It's like we have to be thinking about how do these all interrelate with each other and balance against each other.
Yeah, because the weapons alone, I would think, to be able to make sure that all of those weapons can coexist in an audio environment and still be able to hear them properly so that it still feels like authentic gameplay. I can't even imagine the amount of meetings and testing that has to go on before you feel like you've got that.
Yeah, it definitely took some sorting out. It helped that it felt like it became, it sort of became an extension of Titanfall 1 and 2. So we had a couple games where we were trying to find the formula that worked well for us. But yeah, we ended up with a system where we, really not only have trying to create unique characteristics between each weapon so that they feel unique. You hear the shot in the distance, and I need to be able to acknowledge that you just fired an R301, whether that person that's firing is 1,000 meters away or 10 meters away. That there has to be some consistency in the identity, the sonic identity of that weapon. But at the same time, obviously, because of world physics, how a weapon that's fired 10 meters away from you versus 1,000 sounds significantly different. So we have to design not only how the sound with layers and with filtering changes gradually as you get further and further away, but then we also change the character of it based on where you are in the environment. We have something like 10 different exteriors and interior environment types that we've defined so that the way the sound of the weapon echoes in the world will change, whether you're down in the ravine by the water, or you're inside a small metallic building or a wooden shack or that kind of thing. So yeah, it's this delicate balancing act where we really want to have that sort of realism, that thing where your ear believes that it's being shot in the environment that it's being shot, but at the same time there has to be enough that is retained of the core sound, that you don't start misjudging that between another weapon in the game, no matter where it's being fired.
Yeah, because from playing with much better and more experienced players, I've noticed that the really good players identify not just the fact that they can hear some gunplay going on, whether or not it's deliberate gunplay, whether or not it's two squads really getting into it, or whether it's one squad trying to trick you into coming over and third party something. And on top of that, they're identifying the sound and saying, oh yeah, somebody's got a 301. Somebody's got a wingman. And they know how far away it is. I mean, all of that. I cannot imagine how hard that would be if the audio just wasn't authentic enough. So
Yeah.
the play testers probably is somebody you would lean on pretty heavily at that point.
Yeah, we get feedback from the whole team in terms of their sense of what's easy to hear, what's not so easy to hear, whether something's distinct enough or not distinct enough. I think sometimes because we on the audio team are sort of so attuned to audio that
Right.
subtle differences feel more dramatic to us
Uh-huh.
than to other people. So it's good to get some of their feedback where they say these two things sound very similar to me, and upon first listen to us they sound very different, but then we kind of analyze it more and go, okay, yeah, I can kind of see why somebody might confuse the two.
Right.
So then we try to diversify it a little bit more with some iteration.
Yeah. Now, obviously you've been with Apex since the beginning, but how long have you been with Respawn and the projects that came before Apex?
I came to Respawn just about a year before Titanfall 1 had shipped. So it's a little over 7 years that I've been there.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So how was it always basically the same area you worked in? Always audio directing, or did you start and work your way up to position of director?
No, I mean, I've always been an audio director. I started way back when, back in the mid to late 1990s. And the first job I got in the industry was hired as a freelance sound designer for the PlayStation 1 The Lost World Jurassic Park video game
Okay.
that was being done by DreamWorks Interactive. And after working with DreamWorks Interactive for a little bit, I came on board as their first in-house audio director for their titles. And then started the Medal of Honor franchise and worked on that for quite a number of years. So yeah, I mean, I've been in audio, solely for a very long time.
Right. Technology always is leaping forward, and sometimes it's incremental and sometimes it's exponential. The audio tech that you were working with in the mid to late 90s, was there one thing that slingshot it to where we have it now, or is it just these series of incremental changes that allow you to do what you can do now?
Yeah, it's a series of incremental changes. There's, and what's always funny is we start with so little and then we get so excited about the next console generation.
Mm-hmm.
And, we're dreaming about all the amazing things we're going to do with the next generation. And then we immediately hit a wall on the next generation because we've already our dreams of what we want to do already exceeds what, the technology can handle.
Right.
It's getting better and better, obviously, with each iteration, but the reference I would always give for working with PlayStation 1, which I realize is now even a dated concept, which was, the amount of space we had to work with was a half a floppy disk. And now people say, what the heck's a floppy disk?
Yeah, they don't even know what a floppy disk is.
It's like basically a half a megabyte, 512 kilobytes was, it's like, let's make this game sound like Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah.
512 kilobytes of, data space.
512 kilobytes is basically, if you have like a little graphic on your email signature at the bottom of it, that's 512 kilobytes,
It's ridiculously tiny.
Yeah.
And each generation is multiple times better than the previous generation. And
Mm-hmm.
yet somehow we keep, wanting more and hitting the ceiling. And, we keep looking at the next generation, we're looking at next gen now and getting excited about what the next gen's going to offer us. And they look like there's some really cool innovations, and I'm sure we'll probably hit walls on that too.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, there's one question that has been gnawing at everybody, and I suppose we should get it out of the way. Is the Kraber rifle named after Erik Kraber?
Yes, it is.
All right.
Yeah, that was the story behind that. It was Ryan Lastimosa, who's in charge of our model shop group. He was really cool. He when I first came onto the team and started doing design work, I think people were really excited about the sound work that I was starting to bring, and the other guys on my team were starting to bring to the game. And he heard what I had done for the sniper rifle and decided to call it the Kraber, and somehow it stuck. I don't know how it stuck. Every game I kind of expected them to change the name, and it never did. And so I guess here we are.
Yep.
I just wish I was any good at playing it. I'm terrible with sniper rifles.
I updated my my Twitch title page now so that it says, yes, the rifle is named after him. So, because as you're cruising Twitch, you want to see what you want to watch. And Erik Kraber, people may not, it's like, that's not a household name. You don't have a Twitter account. And so you run silent, run deep. I thought, okay, fine. If anyone's cruising by, you want to hear from the guy that Kraber's named after? Here he is. So now you've got it. Now, that's the other thing I remember talking to you about. When I would come in for one of my sessions, I would tell you, it's like, this is how awful I am at the game, but I'm making fun videos about how awful I am. And I said, I'm sure you're tired of this game and you don't play it ever. And you actually said, no, it's my job to play this game frequently.
Yeah. Yeah, we have to. I mean, you know, and I'm not great at the game at all. Like, I mean, I'm, you know, you could probably imagine against, you know, our team at work, I'm definitely in the bottom third of talent when it comes to playing the game. But yeah, you have to. You know, sometimes you really need to make time because it's very easy to get involved with whatever else you're doing, you know, designing, directing, mixing, that kind of thing. But
right.
Yeah, if you're not playtesting the game, you're not, you know, hearing the results of your work and how it's all working in context and how other people are responding to it. So yeah, you got to keep doing that.
Yeah. Well, I remember you telling me that you were driving one of your kids somewhere with their friends, and it was about a 45-minute drive ahead of you. And I guess before you got in the car, they found out that you worked on the game. And then for the next 45 minutes, you got treated to a laundry list of everything that was wrong with Apex Legends.
Yeah, I still get that. Yeah, it's still, yeah. People are not shy about sharing opinions as they are not online as well. And so, yeah, got to listen to the input and, you know, figure out what to work with and what not to work with. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, he had that kid particularly, he had known for a long time.
Okay.
So he just decided to take this opportunity of my driving them for 45 minutes as, oh, he can't get away from.
Yeah, he's not going anywhere. He's got to hear this.
Anywhere. Now I get to share all of my thoughts about what's not working about your game. Like,
yeah.
Okay.
And by the way, here's my screenplay. Could you read that, please? This is my fanfic of Mirage and Wraith having a family together. Yeah. Well, there's another question. Obviously, you're in charge of the audio. You are intimately involved with everything and anything that has to do with audio. How much did you have to do with casting? Because you were there for the sessions, you were there for the auditions and for the callbacks and all that. And how far along in the process are you when it comes to choosing who's going to be the voice?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a democratic process, but
okay.
It's, you know, Mo, who's in charge of, you know, kind of defining the characters and a lot of the fiction for the game, and Manny and Tom and Ashley, who are writers on our team, and then Josh and Victor, who are on our dialogue team, and then myself. And yeah, we're all kind of trying to work together to figure out who's going to be best. Obviously, Mo and the writers kind of come up with the concept of who this character is and what's their story and what's their background, what's their personality, and then we go out and then, you know, work with Terry Douglas, who's awesome. Who's our
I know Terry,
director.
Yeah,
she's amazing. We've been working with her for many years, so she kind of knows the kinds of quality of talent we're looking for, and she'll go out and try to get us just, you know, pools of auditions for us to listen to. Yeah, and then get to the callback process, and then once we've seen everybody and heard everything, then we kind of get together, and for the most part we're pretty aligned by the time we get to the end of it. Sometimes the process is very challenging along the way because there can be differences of opinion on things, but by the time we get to the end of the process, we're usually pretty unanimous about who we want to cast in each of the roles.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to cause any scandals by you know, getting you to talk about, oh, one was harder to cast than the other. But was one character, I guess, maybe more of a challenge to realize as far as what you wanted to hear from the voice? So, you know, there's one thing to have all your actors come in, but to know what kind of actors you're going to look for to begin with. Was that something that you, as an audio guy, thought, well, based on this design, I don't see why they should sound this way. I think we should look for more this kind of a sound. Were those some knockdown dragouts, or are those usually easier, you know, more easy to resolve?
Yeah, I think that's where the probably the most contention comes with trying to figure it out. I mean, I think you had Moy on earlier who spoke a little bit to, like, with, you know, casting some of the characters, but um, these characters sort of live in our imagination for a while, right? And when a character lives in someone's imagination, my imagination is not the same as your imagination. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter if we're reading the same text on a page.
Right.
How I envision something is going to be different than how you envision it. So I think that's where really the biggest sense of maybe conflict or discussion that needs to happen is that once we actually start hearing talent, then it's like, okay, no, now this becomes one of these people, right? And certainly you are all masters of your art and can evolve and morph into whatever we want, but at the same time, you also have your certain personality and in your energy and your choices that you bring to the character, which a lot of time is way better than what we were even imagining. A lot, but sometimes it takes a while to come around to that too.
Mm-hmm.
Where we're not necessarily hearing what we're expecting to hear in our head, but then it takes a little while to go. What we're hearing in our head doesn't necessarily mean that that is the right direction, and what they're bringing to the character now is so great. Like that's where we should be thinking the character should be.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've had all the other actors on. I'm having Frida on in a few
Oh, great.
weeks. Let's see. Yeah, I think
Very
it's going to
cool.
be. Actually, Frida's on in about 3 weeks. For the most part, some of us had callbacks, some did not. And I know.
I've heard these discussions happen.
Yeah,
I
it's
was
like,
just talking with
wait
Justine
a
about that.
minute. You had to read only once. Although I have to admit that there are some times, and the world of an actor is a very uncertain one. Sometimes you walk into an audition and the other side of the glass loves everything you do, and you're walking out of there and you're practically spending the money already. You're thinking, I got this. And then you don't get it. But in the case of my callback with you guys, I thought, this just seems like they want to make sure I can talk because everything we're doing just seems to perfectly fit each other's expectations. I hardly changed anything I did. I think I remember you guys playing around with my energy level. Can you go more? Can you go a little less? Just finding the levels, but I wasn't changing hardly anything else about it. And I get the feeling that once somebody, at least with this game, gets to the callback stage, you're just making sure that they're not a disaster in the booth. It seems like most of the hard work's done.
In some cases, yeah. I mean, the callback certainly is to just, first to see what people are like to work with, and
Mm-hmm.
we've been lucky that, I don't think there's really been anybody that we've run into that we're like, we wouldn't want to work with them. But,
Yeah.
Our cast, you and everybody else in particular, you guys are just a joy to work with. I mean,
Well, thank you.
every time we have to go back to the sessions, we're excited. Like we're just excited to hang out with you and play and see what you come up with. But I think, yeah, so there's a certain amount of, there's sort of some vetting just to make sure. I
Right.
tend to like to see how people take my direction,
Mm-hmm.
to see how they respond to it, because some people respond in ways that go against my intention, and then that makes me
Mm-hmm.
maybe think, okay, maybe my directing style doesn't work for them, or maybe they just don't take the direction the same way, so that sometimes can affect a choice. And a lot of times, though, it's also just like wanting to play with it, like with
Mm-hmm.
Pathfinder, it's just trying to find the energy. Like, how, deliriously happy is he? Like, is he really deliriously happy? Does he have some
Sometimes.
sense of context? Does he understand what's going on at all? And part of working with you and the other voice talent is trying to find that. Like, where's the gold in that? Like, where's the sweet spot? So for us, it's a lot of wanting to play, wanting to get in there. And at the point that we're at the callback, we want to play. We want to see, how do you guys take direction, and where can we
Right.
go with the character? And what cool hidden gems can we find in your deliveries and your take on the character?
Right. That's good to know because I have a few people that watch the stream that are interested in voice acting. And either that or they're already dipping their toe in it and they want to hit the next level. And so much of this. Oh, look, it's my alert from.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure you're getting one too. Yeah, it's a curfew. Oh, hey. It's 9 o'clock now. We get to stay out for another 3 hours.
Wow, that's much later.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's good. See, that explains that. All right. It's a good thing for aspiring voice actors to remember is that it is one thing to be able to do different voices. That's a nice skill to have, but taking direction might be the most important skill you could possibly have in the booth, because if you can go in there and do it one way, great. If that happens to be exactly what they want and they want literally nothing else. But even when you give a director exactly what they want, now the director's thinking, okay, let's play around because I might change my mind later. Or I might take this take and juxtapose it with another take and think, I need a different take. So if you can't play with your performance, if you're not malleable, and if you can't do it on the fly, then the other actor is going to have an advantage.
Yeah, and that's absolutely true. I mean, we've gone into callbacks, not just on this project, on probably every project they've been on, and thought this is the front runner, right? Based on what they had sent in. And then we get into the callback and they nail it for where they're at, you know, in terms of the audition. And then we push and pull and tug and throw ideas out, and it all stays here. And then we have another actor come in and they're way off the market initially. And then we give some feedback, and then they get way on the mark. And to me, that's great. That person is attuned. They understand what we're looking for. They're able to shape their performance based on the feedback that we're given. And that will tend to be the person that I want to hire, because like you said, it's like, well, what if there are changes to the personality of the character, as can happen with the development of the game? We want to make sure that they have range and that they're able to understand when we kind of push it in a particular way how to get there, you know?
Yeah, I like to think that I'm able to take direction well and that I can go all over the place. But I am convinced in my career there's been a session or two where I haven't been able to get where a director wants to bring me. And sometimes it might be on me. Sometimes it might be on that director's ability to communicate. But there's never a time where being open to direction is bad. Ever.
For sure. And I would say the same thing, like, you know, when people don't get the direction, I don't necessarily think the actor doesn't have the chops, but I direct in a particular way. And, you know, so if they take to that well, then that helps me. And I probably could do my directing differently. And I do, I change it per actor. Like with a lot of, you know, you guys on Apex, you guys have just got your characters down so well, but there are certain tricks that, you know, they're not tricks because you're not being deceived by them, but there are certain things, like, you know, some characters I'm like, give it a handle, you know, and once they give the handle, they give a little extra word before they get into the line. It makes the line feel so much more believable. So it's just, there's little things, or I just need to say little things like accent, you know, and it immediately clicks like, okay, and then just sort of locks them in. So you kind of find each person maybe needs some reminders or nudging in particular directions, and then they lock in, you know, at that point. And my learning that with working with you guys is, you know, a process too, just trying to figure out what it is you guys want or need to feel like you're delivering what we need, you know.
Yeah. Now, when you say give it a handle, as far as the line reading goes, can you explain what that means, like in shorthand?
Sure. It's like adding an extra word
Right.
or a phrase before. So if the line is like, let's go get them, a handle would be like, okay, guys, let's go get them.
Yeah. Or
right?
pre-life, as some directors like to call it.
Pre-life, right. Yeah, it's another expression.
A running start to the line.
Running start.
Yeah.
Basically something that makes it so that the start of the line doesn't feel cold. And it's really easy for us to edit that out. So they can say gibberish, you know, at the beginning if they wanted to. But sometimes it helps get the energy right. It gets the projection of their voice, you know, which is, projection is like how loudly you're speaking, how you're trying to, you know, make your voice sound like it's carrying over a distance, how far you're trying to speak to somebody or say something.
Yeah.
Sometimes it gets that in the right pocket, and without that it sometimes struggles a little bit. So it's things like that.
Well, it's interesting the way you said that you have a directing style. There are little things that you do that help get an actor into the headspace they need to be in that don't seem to be overt. And I thought about that because working with you, I almost feel like you have the Clint Eastwood style, which is, hey, when you're ready. And sometimes Eastwood is notorious for shooting the rehearsal. The actors think they're just doing a run through, and they'll finish their rehearsal, and he'll say, "All right, we got it." Like, what? That was just me warming up. Now we're good. And they didn't even know they were being directed, in other words. And I feel that with you, your energy is such that you're not hitting me over the head with anything. We chat for a few minutes, we get warmed up, and then we jump in. And it's usually very subtle little changes you ask for, but for the most part, I don't feel like I'm being directed, which I think is a compliment to your style, because some actors really, they need this constant feedback. They want to be, they want to be sort of sculpted into a certain performance, and others just want to be let go to do their thing. And I'm somewhere in the middle. I need some boundaries, but for the most part, if you make those clear, I'll give you what you need. And in your case, I feel like I'm in there to play. I'm not gonna, You're not gonna cut me off. You're not gonna stop everything I'm doing, and we end up, hopefully getting what you need.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. That's a nice compliment. I would say though that it's all on you and your natural ability. I mean, you come in and you knock it out of the park. So
Well,
you make
thank you.
my job super easy, as well as everybody else in the cast. But it is true. There are certain actors, within our Apex crew that they want lots of feedback from me. They want like, I'll get to the end of the sessions and I will have spoken a lot. And it's not because they necessarily need the direction. It's just that they like that interaction.
Right.
Whereas I need to stay out of the way as much as possible. They're going to do a great job. I just need to occasionally remind them this or go moving on.
Yeah.
Like that's all they really need. So, but I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah. Or in my case, it's Chris, take a drink of water, please. Could you take a drink of water? Yeah, you're getting a little. Pathfinder doesn't sound like.
Apple. Have we asked you to eat the apple?
No, but that's something that
for actors, we have to have them eat the apple.
Darren DePaul talked about that. I thought that was just unique to him, because I have heard every kind of remedy for getting a voice actor's voice into a certain place. And I don't believe I've ever heard about green apples. And Darren said he has to get so close to the mic for Revenant that he said green apples is the only thing that keeps these lip smacking sounds from happening. So is it an any apple or is it green apples?
Specifically green apples, apparently.
Okay, why is that? Here's a VO technique.
I understood science enough to explain it. There's something about the acidic content of the apple that clears, mucus and stuff out of the mouth, I guess.
All right.
Certainly not a trick I invented. It's one that's, been around for a while. But yeah, for a couple of our actors that do a lot of close mic stuff, like for Darren to get that sound for
I would think JB.
He needs to have that really deep, close presence, and
right.
Therefore it picks up every little detail that your lips make as they're moving around.
Yeah.
So yeah, taking a bite of an apple, every few lines, really can kind of help clear that out and make it so that it's easier for us to edit on the back end.
Now,
it's bad sometimes the amount of apples I make them eat.
Yeah.
He must be so sick of apples by the time we get to the end of the session.
Yeah, he said they had to have a whole basket of them. They said, nobody touch those. Those are Darren's green apples.
We put his name on.
Those are just for Revenant.
People don't eat, yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm thinking about the what I know of the other actors. Some of them I know personally pretty well. Some of them I've gotten to know through this. And just based on their personality and the vocal aspects of their character, I would think, like, if you're doing Branscombe, there's a guy who I'm sure takes direction very well because he's a very seasoned actor. But also, he's naturally so much like Gibraltar that it feels like, let's just hit record. He's gonna, he's Gibraltar.
Yeah, he gives great stuff. He's and always come out with new things. It's like, and every take is different than the last.
Yeah.
which is great. We get a lot of options from him whenever
right.
he does it, and he always has great enthusiasm. He's such a warm personality too. He's so fun. So he just exudes that quality that we have with his character Gibraltar.
Yeah, and then you have somebody like JB who is caustic. JB is a funny, warm, gregarious guy, and British and caustic is none of those things. Right. And so, yeah, and again, seasoned actor and director. So it's not like, oh, we need to give him time to get into his headspace. I imagine JB can just flip that switch and do it.
Oh yeah, he's a consummate pro. He's dialed in from day one. But yeah, for JB and Darren, they're the sweetest, most caring, most likable guys ever, and they play these horrible, awful, just evil-spirited, characters in our game, and we're constantly amused by that, just how completely different they are from their real life personality and voice quality.
And it's hard not to notice that because, like, for me, if you're thinking of a human version of Pathfinder, I'm not that far off the mark. I'm this, sort of tall, gangly guy, and I'm a pretty happy guy, and I'm outgoing, and I get excited easily. And so you think, okay, Pathfinder's coming in. This should be pretty fun. But God help you if you were to typecast for Revenant. Think Revenant's coming in. Just don't make eye contact. I don't know. He's killed 3 engineers already. So it's just... That's one of those times where you're thinking, thank God we have an actor because I don't want to cast for personality type.
Oh, God, no. Yeah, that would... Yeah, can you imagine? Like, what would the person who's actually like caustic be like? We'd walk in and we'd think we'd have a mass murderer on our hands. We're like, are we going to make it out of this session?
Yeah, whatever you do, just don't tell him we need one more for safety.
Yeah. Don't give any feedback.
Yeah, just hit record and leave the room, okay? Oreo's Plays is asking, how tall am I? I'm about 6 feet. Pathfinder is more like 8 feet tall, I think. So, or it's 7.
He's taller,
yeah, he's a bit taller. Yeah.
I'm curious of your thoughts. Like, I remember our first sessions together, and I'm curious of what your thinking was, because I think we hit a point where we hadn't quite figured out our ping system, and we were over-recording. Like, we were recording before we were doing stitching of lines, which, for people who want to know, stitching is when you combine like the first part of the sentence with a different second part of the sentence, which ended up being our, peacekeeper here level 2 or whatever it is.
Right.
Yeah, armor here level 2. Where those are 2 separate things that we record, and then after the fact we stitch them together.
Right.
We had actually written out every single combination of a level with every single type of weapon type. And I remember you hitting a point, I think it was it our second or our third session, where you're just like, I'm on autopilot here, guys.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, oh crap, this is really bad for him.
It's
really not enjoying this process right now.
It's the job. I mean, the job is, I've done video games I've done 4-hour sessions where they give you the copy and it's not formatted like a regular script. It's formatted like video game dialogue or monologue, where it's like a spreadsheet. You've got single lines all the way down the page. There are 75 of them sometimes. And I'll joke with you guys about it because, I'm not going to stop till I give you the read you want, but halfway down the page, it's not English to me anymore. Yeah. It's just a bunch of syllables. But because I have a process and I have a certain amount of technique, I can give you the read you need, but it's just really hard as a human being to read 75 lines in a row. That Mozambique here, and then let's see, I don't know, Kraber here, Deathbox over here, and then just any random line, and then you need every, like you say, iteration of that. And so, by the time you get to the end of the page, you think, I think I read those lines. Did I read those lines? I don't remember. I kind of left my body.
You leave your body at some point. You leave your body because it becomes almost this process, or it's just you're on autopilot.
Yeah, and again,
getting through all of it.
This is almost every video game that features extensive dialogue and gameplay. Gameplay needs context. It needs perspectives. And it needs information. A lot of times that has to come from the character. You have to know that there's a peacekeeper here. You have to know that your teammate has found heavy ammo because you asked him to find it, and he's going to ping it instead of telling you because you're not on your mic. And so this is, as I tell myself, this is filling out the world and it needs to be there. But yes, also as an actor, you realize, look, you're only human. You're going to get impatient with this at some point, but they are paying you. They did hire you and you did try out for the role. So, cowboy up and have a good attitude about this and thank your lucky stars. So yeah, I have a feeling that's going through most voice actors' heads, whether they want to tell you that or not.
Oh no, every one of them did. I remember you in particular where we're just like, hope you're getting what you want here, guys.
Yes.
I'm not even sure what I read on that page.
Yeah, it's like,
That's great.
yeah, you could go back and say, oh, we skipped page 2, and I'll look at it and say, okay, sure. Now we're fucking with you. We totally got page 2. You just don't remember it. It's like, no, I don't.
Yeah.
I don't. People ask me, what were you thinking when you read that line? It's like, I might not have been thinking. I gave you a read, and that was basically my process. There's actors will tell you this. On-camera actors will tell you this. What's your process? Some of them literally play pretend. They don't go through the emotional range their character goes through. Others do not feel like they can give a proper performance unless they put themselves in the same literal headspace of what their character is experiencing. And both are equally valid because it's all about what ends up on screen. And so if you're watching and you really don't know if that actor is experiencing it or just pretending, fine, because you're not supposed to know. You're supposed to believe what's happening. So the fact that sometimes I have left my body while I'm reading these lines should not denude the gameplay experience.
And you guys do a great job with it. I think with some of the other actors who don't, have quite the level of experience that you have, that becomes, the ping system ends up being this strange valley that they have to walk through, this lonely, dark valley. They come out the other side and they're like, did I make it?
Did I? I've not heard it referred that way. That's perfect.
Yeah, they have these moments of thinking, am I going to get fired? Like, was that any good? Because it literally is such repetition of material that, it's impossible to really get a read on what is good or not. Because at a certain point, you don't emotionally connect to the words. You're connecting to it in that you are the embodiment of your character and you've learned your character well enough. I mean, I don't know if you've spoken before on any of your videos here about our process, but we tend to start with the lines that are much more character personality driven. Like we tend to start with the character selects and the taunts,
right,
and the stuff that happens on the champion screen, because those tend to have the greatest sense of, they're longer lines, first of all, but they also have the greater sense of establishing who they are and what their attitude is and what they feel about things. And we even, hint at backstory in some of those lines or character relationships. So we tend to try starting there because we know that at least, allows you guys to play and really find the character first, so that that's really well cemented before it then jumps to the next part of the ping system stuff, which ends up being just, 1,000 lines of here's every different type of object or command you could be giving in the game.
Yeah. Well, now, having said that, hinting at backstory, how much do they tell you about the backstory of these characters that is coming, as opposed to what you already know? Because as the audio director, it would obviously behoove you to know as much as possible about this character, even as far as what they have planned, even though you're not one of the writers. Now, I know that part of the reason why you see the writer in the room is because they need to be able to tell you, yeah, I don't know if that's going to be the read we need because this is coming. So, I mean, how privy are you to what they have planned? Or is it really just you sort of getting this Bible and saying, I've got to stick to this, and I'm not really sure what's coming afterwards?
I'm pretty well informed on stuff. A lot of times there'll be things that are up for discussion, and I think you're aware of that too, where we have ideas of where it's going to go. In some cases, it's very well formed and it's very planned out, and we know you know, excuse me, through season 9 or wherever, where this character arc is going or where this relationship is going. But in other cases, it's like we're playing with it. Like it could go this way, it could go that way.
Yeah.
So I tend to know it. As I'm sure you've experienced, there are times where I've read stuff in the scripts on the day of the session and gone, "What is this referring to?" and then not known what it was. And so, yeah, I obviously Mo and Manny and Tom and Ashley, they are, you know, the keepers of this lore and this fiction, and they know it to probably a much greater level of detail than I do, because, you know, I probably tend to hear when decisions have been made for the most part.
Uh-huh.
I'm not in on the day-to-day discussions of we could do this or we could do that, so they've probably gone through 10 iterations of let's try this out before it actually gets to me to say, oh, okay, this is the way they think it's going to go.
Right. Yeah, this is like the story of Casablanca, which many people consider one of the greatest films ever made. They were writing that script while they were shooting it, which does not normally happen. I mean, there are rewrites that can happen during production, but even that is not something you want to dally with too much. But, you know, writing while you're working is kind of what happens in a game like this, because the game itself, the storylines are very fluid. The gameplay, as people start to have issues with certain kinds of gameplay, you realize, all right, we have to go in and fix something. Does this change a character's trajectory at all, or do we stay on point regardless? So even from an audio standpoint, have you had an experience yet, either with this game or with another game, where you thought you had all the bugs kind of handled, and then it went live, and then you get this instant feedback, and you think, I can't believe we missed that?
Oh yeah, for bugs, absolutely. I mean, I think, you know, we're a team of, you know, with our extended QA departments in different parts of EA,
Mm-hmm.
you know, maybe a couple hundred people. And so we play test as much as we possibly can to make sure that we've figured out all the issues, found all the loopholes, that kind of thing. And then, you know, literally within the first like half an hour of the first day that it's gone live, it's already been played by, you know, millions of people. So
Yeah.
it's like we didn't get millions of people's of hours worth of, you know, testing on it.
Right.
We physically cannot do that. So us being able to have a relative amount of confidence in what we're putting out, and then putting it out into the world, and then trying our best to be, you know, reactive to that and respond to it as quickly as we can is really the name of the game for us, because there's no way we're ever going to get the quality and the level and the amount of testing that we can, even just with, you know, a single day of it being out in the wild.
Surely there must be a way to come up with AI that can play a game millions of times like a player would. Like the end, like one of the last scenes of War Games, which is one of my favorite movies from the 80s, where the computer takes over and plays tic-tac-toe on its own. And it does it millions of times in a second because it's a computer. There must be a way to create all these different gamer personality profiles and turn them into AI and have them play millions of times. I mean, if somebody could figure that out, oh man.
We certainly do that with certain aspects of code, right? I mean, we have AIs that stress test
right.
different code or tools or that kind of thing. I think with that though, I mean, that's a cool concept, but we also need to spin up servers to support all of that as well.
Yeah.
So, you know, that becomes a logistics issue in itself. But yeah, it would be cool if there were ways to automate that process a bit more.
Yeah, and you'd have to add a certain level of snark and overall discontent, you know, that to capture what some gamers bring to the experience. And, you know, we call this the Reddit applique that we like to add to AI at the end. Just a nice patina of being pissed off about anything that you could possibly do.
Angry about all of it.
Yeah, although I have to say, my experience with Reddit has been overwhelmingly positive. But man, when the negative stuff occasionally hits, it's like this ripple in a pond. It just sort of stands out. And I realize that I cannot imagine what it's like for a dev or somebody working in the just the technical aspect of the game what it must be like for them to drop by Reddit to see what's happening. Because, you know, you tend to notice the critiques because you have to, because you want to fix them.
Yeah, I think that can be tough. I mean, I think we want feedback. We want to know what people are thinking. If people aren't happy with stuff, we want to know about it.
Right.
The way in which the feedback is framed is sometimes very personally hurtful. And that is sometimes hard to disconnect with, that they're making judgments about your competency or, you know, using really bad language. And, you know, it feels like, you know, we do read that. We do read a lot of that. So I guess mission accomplished if your point is trying to hurt our feelings about it. But, you know, we try to sift through that and find the intent behind the angry statement and figure out, well, okay, what is it that, you know, they really want to have happen, and how feasible is that, and do we agree with that or do we not agree with that? So it takes some sorting out, but I don't know if Reddit users are quite aware of that. Yeah, it can hurt our feelings for sure.
Yeah.
We do read that stuff.
I had Brian Deckard and Amelia Rose Blair on a couple of months back, and they're streamers, but they've also done a lot of acting and voice acting. And what they told me was, because they do a pretty regular stream, and when they see people in chat being trolls, sometimes, you know, they'll want to go after them a little bit. And Brian told me, I have to remind myself, everyone on the internet is 12. And so,
exactly.
either, you know, when you get somebody trolling, either they're literally 12 years old or just emotionally they're stuck on 12. And he says, I just try to keep that in mind. And so it keeps them from blowing up. But,
yeah, you have to take that perspective. You know?
Yeah.
I think there's that certain amount of anonymity that the internet brings that makes people say and do things that they wouldn't otherwise if you were face to face, and you have to take that into account. And
the internet tough guy is certainly a thing. You
have to have a little bit of a thicker skin with that and go, okay, that's how this medium works. How we're going to interface on this. Okay.
Absolutely. But that's one thing for people to keep in mind. I've been doing this for 20 years, you know, in Los Angeles professionally. And I've got a pretty thick skin about it. And for the most part, I'm lucky in that I haven't had to endure too much criticism. But then again, I've not reached the heights of some of my colleagues who, my God, they get tons of love, but they also sometimes just get really hounded by some of this. And even with 20 years in and more for some of them, it's still, if you're a human being, it's still going to sometimes affect you a little bit. You're going to think, no, why would you say that? Why would you bother typing that? So,
And I would say at the end of the day, it's because they're angry and they want to hurt someone. And mission accomplished.
Right.
Feelings get hurt.
Yeah.
But we're not going to retaliate. We're going to try to sift through it and find what's useful in the feedback, and hope that they come around and understand that, you know, we're trying really, really hard to make everything as good as possible, to make the experience as rewarding and you know, good for them as possible. And we're going to keep trying at it. You know?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I know that you have an out before 2:00, and so we can open it up for some questions so that we can get you out of here. What's your out time again? Is it 1:30 or 1:45?
1:45 is probably.
1:45 is good. All right. Supermoon60 is saying, you can't be mean to Chris. He's too innocent. Well, you can be mean to me if you want, and I ain't innocent. I'm good at playing it. But I appreciate it, Supermoon. Trust me. If you knew what was going on in my mind, I don't know if you'd ever come back to this stream, for fear that some of it might leak out. I just
You're well controlled.
Yeah, I'm an artist. I'm an actor. It is a roiling cauldron of just insanity. But I'm just very high functioning. So let's put it that way. Okay. So as far as the questions go, the mods basically have a way to filter these things through. So mods, if you want to throw out a question at a time that you guys have been collecting, here's one of my internet friends, someone who has helped me understand the game from the beginning, is Janissary. She's got one. Respawn has obviously taken accessibility into account with its colorblind settings and subtitles, but how common is it for audio folks to consider gamers with low or no vision? The games, which tend to be more playable for blind folks, have robust stereo sound design, distinct audio cues for each action, and audio ambiance, which can help the player orient themselves. Apex has all this, but lacks menus that read TTS. How much consideration is normally given to different disabilities? I understood none of that, by the way. I assume you did.
Yeah, well, I think we do have text-to-speech support. I can't remember whether it's specifically in the menu system or if it's just the chat.
Okay.
But yeah, we try to be considerate of that. Certainly, it sounds like we can be making greater, strides towards accomplishing that. But certainly, we do try to, for all players, try to make sure that there is enough sonic differentiation between things in the world that we really want that test of, even though you can't see it and you can hear it, you know what it is, an ability, a weapon type, whatever it may be. So we are certainly not sitting back and just expecting visuals to create the differentiation for us and we just make it sound however we want. We really do think about every ability and weapon and pickup and heal and whatever it is, that those all have their own sonic signature and their own space that they kind of sit within. We think about frequencies that things sit within and how to make sure that those don't conflict. So we do our best with it. Certainly we could probably be doing more.
Gotcha. Well, yes, and even Janissary says it is tough to consider everyone. And Volty, one of my mods, said, yes, the colorblind settings need tweaking, but I love that they're even making an effort when most companies won't. So, yeah, having worked with you guys for a while now, Respawn and Apex they bend over backwards thinking about the needs of the gamers, while at the same time holding fast to certain principles. Like Tom said, about the cornucopia of different characters they have in the game. If there are people out there that don't like that they have characters like this, then just don't play the game, because we're not going to change that aspect of it. So yeah, I like that they hold fast.
Diversity and representation, and we're certainly not going to back away from that.
Right. Here's one from Hadi290, HADI 290. Would you ask Erik what you think about the next-gen console's audio?
I think there's gonna be some cool stuff that we can do with it. We're starting to take a look at what the capabilities are. Like I said, we inevitably hit walls with everything, so I'm sure we're gonna hit a wall with what we want to do. But we're just starting to get to that point where we're really investigating and figuring out what we want to do. So I don't know if I can give much more detail than that.
Right. Let's see. Here's one from Orange Jacinto, friend of the stream. When designing a character soundscape, how deep do you go when mixing unusual sounds? So, yeah, I mean, I guess you'd have to think about what an unusual sound is.
Yeah, it'd be good to know what they think an unusual sound.
Yeah.
How deep do you go to mix an unusual sound?
Yeah, how deep do you go when mixing unusual sounds? I guess how much do you try to fill out the world, I guess maybe is the question. Yeah. Are there some things you think, well, let's not bother putting this in, they're never going to detect it, or do you put it in anyway because it should be there?
Yeah, actually, that's a good way to put it. We struggle with it a lot. Our soundscape is really dense. There are a lot of sounds happening all the time. Our tendency from the aesthetic that we want is we love detail. Like, we're a very detail-oriented sound design group. Brad and Tyler and Jordan and Rick and Josh and Victor, like, we all on the audio team, we really love when we play games that feel like every detail has been painted, in the world. But at the same time, there is something to say that feedback and clarity happens when the density is less. So we do have to make judgment calls every once in a while of, does this really need a sound? Like, if it does have a sound, how forward should it be? How attention grabbing should it be? And that's even sometimes a struggle from a design point of view, when from a sound design point of view, when we're approaching a sound that we want to create. The natural tendency is, I'm going to make this the coolest sounding whatever that has ever existed, right? That's sort of the gauntlet you throw down for yourself. And part of my job, probably sometimes to the frustration of my team, is to sort of say, this is not a hero element. This is not a sound that needs to stand out. This is a sound that needs to blend in, and it needs to be just enough to give the proper indication of what's going on, but nothing more than that. And so there are, we certainly make decisions sound to sound about where it needs to sort of live in this hierarchy of how standout it is.
Right.
A legendability is obviously something that needs to be super recognizable and in your face, but a Foley element, a dropping of a box, or the rolling of a ball or something, like there's certain things where you're like, that should not be the most attention grabbing sound in the game. That's drawing your attention in the wrong way. It needs to be there to make me go, this world's real. That thing made a sound, but my ear is being grabbed by these other things. So I subconsciously acknowledge that made a sound, but I'm not putting my attention to it.
Right. Well, here's one from Civheaded, one of my mods. Question for Erik. Is soundproofing a room for a voice recording session different from soundproofing for a music recording? If so, how?
Yeah, and I'm certainly not an expert in this, but for sure, because a lot of times with music recording, the want is for there to be a presence of a room.
Yeah.
The way that an instrument excites the sound waves in a room by creating reflections is what helps give the instruments a personality and a character. It's why when you see things that get recorded in great halls, like we've been fortunate to record a bunch of our stuff over at Abbey Road,
Oh, nice.
And it's just that room sounds amazing. And it's that room that creates the proper acoustics to make those instruments, especially acoustic instruments, really sing. Whereas for voice, typically, unless you're using what we call worldizing, which is trying to get a sound to actually feel like it's recorded in the same environment that it will exist in eventually, in the game or whatever. Usually we want it as dry as possible. We want it to be without any presence of reflections off of any surfaces. We want it to be, in an echoic chamber, if possible, that sense of complete absence of reflection and just direct signal into the microphone. So yeah, I'd say in general, the approaches are fairly different, but they can coincide.
Yeah. Well, to that end, my wife is also a singer, and for her to lay down vocals for when she's working on something, she does not use my boost. She says, I don't want to use that. I want different acoustics. I want some bounce. And so she'll go into the bathroom because it has a higher ceiling and it's porcelain and it's just regular walls. And she wants that vocal bouncing all over the place. She says typically that's what singers want. It gives extra life to their recording. And there's a great documentary from, it's got to be almost 10 years old now. It's called It Might Get Loud. And it's Jimmy Page, Jack White, and The Edge from U2 talking about how they came upon their careers in playing music, playing guitar and all that. And Jimmy takes them to this country house where they recorded Led Zeppelin 4. And he shows them this hallway, sort of a foyer almost. And he says, this is where we put the drum kit for Bonzo, for John Bonham, to record the drums for When the Levee Breaks. And for anyone who knows the song When the Levee Breaks, the drums own that song. And those drums are happening. It's like they're in a cavern. But he says, look straight up. And it's like 3 stories up. And it's almost like a cathedral kind of ceiling. So the drums, when they recorded them, just went up and down that cone inside that country house. And it totally makes the song. And you would never record a voiceover session in that. It's
No.
like, no, we won't be able to use any of this.
No, it would be totally unusable, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
but that the what is captured in that space is so magical. It's like you want to be in that space, and we now have
Yeah.
gotten more sophisticated with convolution, which allows us to actually record and digitally simulate spaces that things are recorded in, so we can get closer to it. But still being in that space makes that magical. And like for your wife, it's like it feels good to her to be in that space singing.
Yeah.
She doesn't want that dry environment. Even if you digitally recreated it, it probably wouldn't feel the same to have headphones on so she could hear a digital representation of your bathroom. She just
Right.
likes being in the bathroom and hearing how it echoes across the walls.
Yep. Here's one from Orange Jacinto again. How deep is the Foley library you guys have amassed over the first 10 years? I guess that's going back to Titanfall. Have you made completely new sounds from old files you already have?
Yeah, I mean, specifically when we say Foley, we typically refer to small props and objects,
Right.
things for footsteps, cloth,
Mm-hmm.
little objects. So that we would usually consider that separate than our field recording, which field recording are things we need to go out and do outside of a small controlled space. So that would be things like the weapons recordings, or, we recorded lots of debris. We like dropped debris from cranes from 22 feet up and had them smash on the ground, and recorded that, and we used that. So we've collected quite a bit of stuff since Titanfall 1 days. I think there's always a want to do more,
Mm-hmm.
and less time to be able to do it. But yeah, we've amassed quite a bit of stuff. We work with Warner Brothers a lot, with um, Brian and Emma over at Warner Brothers, and they've been super helpful with us for the years. Brian Watkins has done a ton of field recordings with us for weapons and everything else, and also helped set up Foley sessions that we do on their stages over on the Warner Brothers lot. So we have a bunch of stuff that we recorded from them through the years.
I was always fascinated by how they were able to come up with some of the sounds for Star Wars, because this is probably 78, after that movie had just blown up, they had a documentary air on regular network TV, which back then was all you had. 3 channels. Right. 3 channels in PBS. That's it. And it was the making of Star Wars.
Remember that.
Yeah, I know. We're the only ones. Yeah. No, it didn't. No, what? TV? What the hell is that even?
Right. Why bother with that?
Yeah. What the blaster sound that everyone grew up with, that, chong, chong. Everybody just grew up with that, and you just sort of accept that's how a blaster sounds. Well, the way they came up with that, this guy's, I think he has like a wrench, and he's out
a wrench on
on a telephone wire, like a cable leading to a phone pole, and it's just that perfect sound. And I thought I thought they had some crazy computer. And for Lord of the Rings, for Fellowship of the Ring, the documentary, they talk about the Balrog, the noise of the Balrog roaring at them. Some of it, I think, was either a lion or a grizzly bear, and they took actually grizzly bear was Chewbacca. I think some of his stuff is a bear. It's literally a bear. Yeah. But for the Balrog, it was either a lion or a large cat of prey, lion or tiger, and literally taking a cinder block and scraping it across pavement. Yeah. So there's this underneath.
The process is crazy where you end up finding stuff. I mean, the world of what you record it can be so manipulated now too. I mean, the natural physical world creates stuff that you would never imagine, like, that's real. It doesn't seem real. And then we have on top of it, the capability of recording things with a really high amount of detail, what we would call, a high sample rate or a high bit depth. And we can now pitch up or pitch down, slow down the sound significantly and have it still be this very full frequency sound, and find crazy things just in the recorded world, but slowed down.
Gotcha.
Things that you never think of. But yeah, you have to kind of start thinking outside of the box of things, like, old Jurassic Park days, like car door shuts where we used for claw snaps of dinosaurs, and just things where you're like, your brain starts thinking rather than literally this is what I need, you think what lives in the same sort of
Yeah.
transient frequency, expression space as this thing I'm thinking of, and that's totally disconnected from it. And maybe I should start exploring that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because visually, the person's already there. So whatever sound you get, they're going to meet you halfway sometimes. They're not going to think, that sounds like a car door shutting. No, they see the talon, the claw, and they're with you.
Yeah, exactly. It's easy. It's interesting how there have been tests, where you put something that if you close your eyes and listen to it, you just immediately can point out what that sound is. You take that exact same sound, put it in sync, which means the timing matches to something that happens in a visual that you're watching, and your brain just accepts that was that sound.
Yeah.
Even though it has nothing to do with it, you're just like, well, it happened at that moment, so that was that sound, and that was appropriate.
Yep. Here's one from Supermoon. Can you ask Erik if Respawn is working on Titanfall 3 or are they finished with the franchise? I'm sure you get asked this a lot.
I don't think I'm allowed to talk about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep, you can ask. It doesn't mean we can answer. So, yeah.
Sorry, I can't talk about that.
Yeah. Top Cone Bone 69. This is one of my favorite gamer tags. He's managed to fit every sexual innuendo into one gamer tag. Yeah. How was the process of modifying the voices of Pathfinder, Bloodhound, and Revenant? That's one thing I was going to ask you, too. It's like, how do you get my record and, say, JB's record, Darren's record, especially Allegra's record, her audio for Bloodhound? What's the process of what you guys have to do? It's probably not much for mine, and probably not that much for Darren, too, because where you can go. But for Bloodhound, it has to be pretty involved.
Yeah, I mean, I wish Joshua Nelson were on here to speak of it. He and Victor Derling on my team are sort of the wizards of coming up with the processing. I remember when Josh came up with the processing for Revenant's voice, and I mean, Darren takes it way far with what he does with his voice, but
yeah.
Oh man, after the processing that Joshua created for it, it was incredible. He does a lot of, I'm probably going to quote him wrong, but I think he uses even some like granular resynthesis and delay to kind of create this sort of, if you listen closely to his voice, he has this sort of robotized after sort of delay to his voice, and some chorusing and flanging and some just general delay on the voice. For your voice, we use some sort of chorus and delay effect, and I think slight pitch altering to it, but at a slightly different, just a little bit off of a frequency that kind of creates a little bit more of that sort of alien robotized kind of feel. For Allegra, for what we do for Bloodhound, we have a process that makes it feel like it's coming through a mask, and we pitch her voice down a little bit.
Right.
She already comes with sort of a deeper tone. For Branscombe, for Gibraltar, we pitch his voice down as well to make him sound deeper and bigger.
I always suspected that. Yeah, it seems like he's pitched down just a little.
Yeah. It's always funny hearing our temp tracks, because certain characters, when they interact with each other, don't quite sound like themselves.
Right.
Pre-processing. Again, yours is fairly close. Yours is, you don't deviate. We don't do too much manipulation. We really wanted your natural voice to shine through. It needed to have this clean quality to it, right? I mean, Pathfinder's such a positive, always upbeat in the face of the most ridiculous circumstances kind of guy, that we didn't want to, take him to sort of the level that we would want for something like a simulacrum, like
Revenant,
where he's just, we want him to sound messed up,
right?
We want him to be dark and evil,
right? Here's obviously Ms. will ask, I'm sure there's not going to be an answer for this, but ILM Star will respawn buff Pathfinder, like instead of 35 seconds, do 30, 25, or 20. This is not Erik's department, but obviously if you've been privy to anything,
no, it's not part of my department. I don't make the calls on that, but I know that our design team is constantly listening to people, listening to feedback, looking at where character balance is. I mean, a decision like this isn't made without a lot of thought beforehand. It's not like this was thrown out into the world with oh wait, people are upset about that.
Yeah.
You know, we know that there are some big changes, but really our end goal is to try to make it so that every playable legend is an equal match to each other.
Right.
And sometimes with the way the meta of the game goes, some characters get a little overpowered and then they become very dominant in the game. And then we need to find ways to make sure that other characters are equally viable. And sometimes that means buffing other characters to make them stronger. And other times it means, taking, nerfing a character a little bit to try making them feel more in line with the rest of them.
Right. It's a process. They're not throwing a dart at a board. Trust me on that.
It's certainly not. I can tell you for sure that it's not a random afterthought of like, oh yeah, let's try it out. Like,
exactly.
There's a lot of people thinking long and hard and looking at a lot of data, analyzing a lot of data to kind of try figuring out what the right moves are. And we know that, initially the audiences maybe will be upset about it, but we're trying to do what we think is best for the health of the game.
Absolutely. And which of these things will piss off Chris the most? And yeah.
Well, that's the first thought. I mean, that's how all discussions start.
Yeah,
it's like, Edgley, how do we piss him off today?
It's like, 35 seconds. That'll do it. Yeah. Okay. We pretty much have reached the end of your time here, but what I usually like to do, thank you for all the questions. First is give you a chance to, because with the other actors, I'll do ad libs with them. We'll improv a little bit, my character and their character. But since you have gotten to direct me in all these things, if there's ever been a line you've wanted me to say, and there was no time to do it in the session, if there's ever anything you've wanted Pathfinder to say, you're the guy to call it. So here I am at your disposal, and it's whatever line you want. Yeah. Or if it's just a shout out to somebody, I am at your disposal, sir.
I can't think of anything. You're putting me on the spot. I don't know, man. I feel like I've heard everything come out of your voice.
I know. Yeah, like especially the outtakes. It's like, yeah, we're never going to use that. It's like, that's for the Christmas party, I guess.
There's a particular thing. This isn't for you, but there is something that we want to record with our voice actor, Branscombe.
Okay.
Who plays Gibraltar, because he's and I can't give away what it is, but
okay,
we're recording him today, and it's
all
very
right.
Specifically for somebody at our studio. It's a shout out to them.
Okay.
And we rarely do it, but we really, really are excited about doing it. But yeah, I want to do more stuff like that, where we kind of have secret shout outs to people actually embedded in the game through your voice recordings.
In other words, instead of Pathfinder pinging your weapon, it's instead of Kraber here, it's more like Erik Kraber here.
There you go.
Wink, wink.
Do that.
Nudge.
Put my first name in front of everything that's redo all your Kraber lines. Add Erik at the head of them.
Say Erik, Kraber here. Kraber here. And you can do so much with the read.
I think you did that during the sessions. I'm pretty sure you may have done that during our sessions.
I probably did.
Came about at one point where you knew that was named after me.
There's no way I'm going to let that go. Yeah, there's no way I'm going to let that go uncommented upon. It's like, wait a minute. You're the director. They gave you a gun? All right. Is our engineer's name Mozambique? Just out of curiosity, because I can't understand that. Exactly. Yeah. All right. Well, having said that, we've covered your. All right. You're going to get your own special shout out in the game later. Then somehow we'll get that in there. But is there anything you would like to say to the Apex community as they are here and hanging on your every word?
Just thank you for playing the game and giving us your honest feedback on it, and your excitement. And I mean, I can tell you, the love we get from the community and the artwork that we see from the community is so inspiring to the rest of the team. I don't know how much the community really knows that we see a lot of that. A lot of people have, their backdrop on their computer is fan art that has been sent over. I know you guys, the voice actors, have been sent a lot and love that, and have printed it and put it up in your walls. And so we just love the community's involved and vocal and really into it and supportive. And yeah, just please keep doing that.
Yeah. you guys keep playing. We'll keep making it. So yeah, and one last one from ZW Troll. Best sound in any game I know of. Great work, everyone. So, and I think that's echoed here. Pardon the pun, but yes. So Erik, a pleasure. I'm glad I was able to finally get you in here. And
yeah, I'm sorry that it took so long. We've been talking about this for how many months now?
Yeah, a while. Well, you're the reason why I got. You're the reason why I was able to get Chantel on, because Chantel was the last actor I couldn't get on. I had no way of reaching her. I had no way of knowing. And you said, "Oh, well, she's coming in an hour after you're done." And I said, "Well, we've never met, so if I just hung out, that'd be a little creepy." So
yeah.
How about I just?
She was really excited about it. She didn't know.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, she because she's not as much a part of the voice acting community. You know, she's mostly an on-camera actor.
Right.
I think it's been this nice introduction where she's really started to get to know you guys, and I think she's on the same text thread with all of you guys, and started to be more involved in that. But I know she was really excited to be part of all that.
Yeah, which I was surprised by. I thought she's not going to have time for this, but Erik passed along the message, and she consented. So yes, and we're going to continue this. And yes, if you find other folks in the work chain that want to come on and talk about it, I am all for having them on. I want the viewers to see every facet of how this game is made, and from the horse's mouth. I want to hear it from the people that are in the trenches doing this work. So yeah, let's keep in touch about that.
A bunch of people that would be great for your community to hear, and
cool.
Probably really excited to go. So yeah,
all right, will do. And Erik, thanks to you. Hope to see you in person soon.
I know. Be nice to not have to do this all virtually. It's great to see you this way, and I appreciate you having me on. But yeah, nice to actually be in physical person again.
Thanks for coming on, sir.